The great hall of the sundered Concorde had never felt so cold, though the temperature had not changed by a single degree. Ambassador Caleb Reyes stood at the human delegation's podium, hands folded behind his back, watching 17 alien dignitaries whisper behind translation shields that were supposed to be soundproof. They weren't soundproof to human ears. Not anymore. Serena Voss, seated 2 chairs down from him, had spent the last 6 months quietly reverse-engineering the Concorde's translation matrices under the guise of cultural liaison work. She had a tablet in her lap that looked like she was taking notes. She was not taking notes. "They're stalling," she murmured, barely moving her lips. The Kathrani delegate just told the Vosh envoy that the fleet will be in position by the 14th. Caleb didn't flinch. 3 years of sitting across from beings that considered emotional control a weakness had trained that out of him. Position for what? He didn't say, but he called it the correction. The Concorde had invited humanity to the peace talks with great ceremony 18 months ago, after the brief, brutal skirmish at the Thrin Corridor, where 3 human colony ships had been intercepted and boarded under the pretense of a customs inspection. 12,000 civilians had died in the ensuing misunderstanding. The Concorde had apologized. Humanity, still new to the galactic stage and desperate to avoid a war it could not yet win, had accepted the apology and come to the table. Caleb had never trusted it. Nobody who apologizes that fast has anything to lose by lying. High Speaker Thrella Moss rose from the central dais, her 4 eyes sweeping across the assembled delegations with the practiced warmth of someone who had given this speech 100 times to 100 different species right before erasing them from star charts. "Delegates of Earth," she intoned, "the Concorde extends, in good faith, a permanent ceasefire and open trade corridor, contingent only on the standard integration protocols." Standard integration protocols meant handing over humanity's jump gate architecture for safety audits. It always did. Every species that had joined the Concorde in the last 300 years had handed over their gates during the goodwill phase, and every species that had done so had, within a decade, found itself with no gates it actually controlled. Caleb rose. "Earth appreciates the Concorde's continued hospitality," he said, and let the pause stretch just long enough to be insulting. "We'll need 48 hours to review the integration terms with our government." Thrella Moss's mandibles clicked, the Concorde equivalent of a satisfied smile. "Of course, Ambassador. Take the time you need." They thought 48 hours was a formality. They thought humanity was buying time to draft a surrender dressed as diplomacy. They were wrong about which side was buying time. Serena caught up with him in the transit corridor outside the hall, her heels clicking against the deck, plating in a rhythm too controlled to be casual. "The 14th, she said. "That's 2 days from now. Whatever they're planning, it lines up with the deadline they just gave us." "They're not waiting for our answer," Caleb said. "They already know what we're going to say. They're just giving us the courtesy of a countdown before the fleet arrives to make the decision for us." "So what do we do?" Caleb looked at her, and for the first time in 18 months of careful, bloodless diplomacy, he let something show in his face. Not fear. Relief, almost. The waiting was over. "We do what humans have always done when someone hands us a countdown," he said. "We use it." Back on Earth, Fleet Admiral La Conquerez, Caleb's sister, though almost nobody at the Concorde knew that, and it had taken considerable effort to keep it that way, had been running contingency drills since the day the ceasefire talks were announced. Not because she expected betrayal specifically, because she had learned, the hard way, at Thrin, that specifically was a luxury humanity could no longer afford. When Caleb's encoded burst transmission arrived, 3 words, buried in a routine diplomatic status report, meaningless to anyone without the key, she didn't hesitate. Countdown confirmed. 14th. Project Threshold had been humanity's worst-kept secret among its own military and its best-kept secret from everyone else. Every jump gate humanity had ever built, the 23 gates linking Sol to its colonies, and the 4 experimental gates linking Sol to Concorde space, sat on a kill-switch architecture that no other species had thought to look for, because no other species had ever needed one. The Concorde didn't build gates that could refuse them. They built gates that obeyed. Humanity had built gates that could say no. At 0300 Sol Standard, 31 hours before the Concorde's fleet was scheduled to arrive at the correction staging point, a position Serena's stolen intercepts had placed disturbingly close to Sol's outer gate array. Admiral Aconcor gave the order. Every human jump gate in Concord-adjacent space went dark simultaneously. Not destroyed, not damaged. Simply, silently, refused. Any vessel mid-transit was gently, apologetically, shunted back to point of origin by fail-safes humanity had spent 4 years perfecting exactly for this moment. Any vessel attempting to force a connection found nothing on the other end but vacuum and the particular, specific silence of a door that had decided it was no longer a door. The Concorde fleet massing at the staging point, 11 capital ships, positioned exactly where Threlamoss's private channel had promised her allies humanity's gate would be cooperatively decommissioned for audit, arrived at coordinates that led nowhere. Their navigation computers screamed contradictions. Their jump drives, calibrated to human gate frequencies they'd been quietly, illegally mapping for months in preparation for the correction, found only static. Humanity hadn't just kept its front door locked. It had kept the fleet from ever finding the house. The Great Hall was in chaos when Caleb walked back in, 40 hours after the deadline he'd requested, precisely 3 hours before the original 48 would have expired. Threlamoss met him at the dais, her composure fractured in ways he'd never seen a Concorde official allow in public. "Your gates," she hissed. "Every human gate in Concorde space has gone dark. Do you understand what you've done? You've isolated your entire species. We've isolated ourselves from you." Caleb corrected, calm as still water. "There's a difference." Serena stepped up beside him, tablet no longer pretending to be anything but what it was, a transcript, translated and time-stamped, of Threlamoss's private channel discussing the correction, the staging coordinates, and the phrase cooperative decommissioning used with a wink that no algorithm needed to translate for its meaning to be obvious. "We know about the fleet," Serena said. "We know about the 14th. We know what standard integration protocols actually meant for the last 6 species who agreed to them. We did the math, High Speaker. And we decided we'd rather be alone than be next." The hall had gone silent, the genuine kind, not the performative diplomatic kind. Every delegate present, human and otherwise, understood in that moment that a species barely 3 centuries removed from horse-drawn transport had just demonstrated it could vanish an entire star system's worth of infrastructure from Concorde Reach in under 30 seconds, without warning, without negotiation, and without losing a single ship of its own. Caleb let the silence sit exactly as long as it needed to. "The ceasefire terms are simple now," he said. "No integration, no audits, no gates but our own, governed by no laws but our own. You may trade with us, on our terms, through corridors we control and can close at will. Or you may explain to the rest of the Concorde why your correction fleet came home empty-handed and your target star system simply stopped existing on your maps." Threlamoss's 4 eyes moved across the human delegation. Caleb, unshaken. Serena, unblinking. The transcript, damning and public now, spreading through Concorde diplomatic channels faster than any of her people could contain it. "You would have gone to war," she finally said, quietly, "over an audit." "No," Caleb said. "We went to lockdown over a lie." "There's a difference there, too." He turned, Serena falling into step beside him, and walked out of the great hall of the sundered Concorde, the first delegation in 300 years to leave a peace summit not with a treaty, but with every door slammed shut behind them, and every one of those doors still, unmistakably, humanity's own to open again.